I asked Congressman Mark Pocan if Kamala Harris can take over the Senate. An interesting conversation. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Congressman Mark Pocan, co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin, taking your calls for the hour. And Congressman, if I may take a moment of host's privilege here and ask you a question on behalf of myself that's a little complex. I got into this quite a bit on the air yesterday, and then I spent the entire afternoon and half the evening last night reading the rules of the Senate, printing out in hundreds of pages, reading the rules of the Senate, reading James Madison's, notes from the debates in the Constitutional Convention, and also reading the history of individual vice presidents, starting with John Adams. And here's what I found. The Constitution says that, and I quote, this is Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5A, the Senate shall choose their other officers and also a president pro tempore, in other words, a sitting president, a temporary acting president, in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of President of the United States. So, in other words, and you go back to the original debates, and the assumption was that the vice president would have principally a legislative job while being the president in waiting. They would be the person who runs the Senate. You go to the Senate rules, and the question I'm getting to, and I'll just hit it right off. You go to the Senate, is it possible that Kamala Harris, as vice president, can simply walk in and say, Mitch, you're not in charge anymore. I am the president of the Senate according to the United States Constitution, and I'm going to take that role. The rules of the Senate start out, in the absence of the vice president, the Senate shall choose a president pro tem who shall hold the office and execute the duties thereof during the pleasure of the Senate and until another is elected or his term of office as senator expires. And then the second, rule number 2, this is appointment of a senator to chair. In the absence of the vice president and pending the election of a president pro tem, the acting president pro tem shall, or the secretary of state shall perform the duties of the chair. And it goes through this whole long list, and every single one of them is in the absence of the vice president. John Adams actually presided over the Senate. Thomas Jefferson, when he became vice president in the Adams administration, basically hated John Adams, was a different political party, didn't want to have anything to do with anything political, and he spent most of his time as vice president writing what are now the rules for the Senate and the House, which include the stuff I just read to you. After Jefferson's presidency, vice presidents started presiding over the Senate again and continued to right up until around 1890, when vice presidents just said, okay, that's it, and there were times when they did and didn't, and sometimes there was conflict around it and sometimes there wasn't. But to the best of your knowledge, has anybody raised this? And I realize you have access to the House parliamentarian. I don't know if you do to the Senate parliamentarian. But is this viable? Mitch McConnell, and the other thing about the rules of the Senate that I learned doing a real deep dive into some constitutional scholars is that while the House actually has fairly rigid rules, the Senate's rules, most of the way that the Senate operates, for example, the whole concept of the leader of the majority party being the person who determines the Senate schedule, that's not in the rules. That's simply tradition. Just like the leader of the Senate shall hold hearings and allow a vote on the president's nomination of a person for the Supreme Court. McConnell came out and said, hey, that's not in the rules. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the rules. So I'm just going to ignore it. So to my question, do you think that Kamala Harris could take over the Senate?
So I'm sure since you've said it that someone's looking into it, right? I have not heard this previously. Anyone talking about that. I think when you get to the rules, it gets really complicated. We're having an issue right now with technically January 3rd is the transition for the new Congress, of which they were trying to do the swearing in on the 6th. But if you could have a fight that says you have to do it on the 3rd, which would mean there are some issues about getting members in and a lot of things, especially during the times of COVID, where member absences are certainly going to be a little more prevalent, we're finding, as members have been getting COVID lately. So we're trying to work through those rules on the House side now. I haven't even begun to look at any Senate rules, having not served there. But I think just the fact that you brought it up, my guess is there are people who are looking at it, but I have not heard this raised as any possibility. Again, probably for the same reason we talked about. Sometimes something looks good, like technically on paper, and there is another very good, valid reason why it can't happen. But let's hope people are looking at it.
Well, 10 years ago, I don't think anybody would have thought if the president nominates a member of the Supreme Court, 9 months before the end of his term,
right,
the Senate will simply refuse to even interview the guy. And that's in the Constitution also. So if you run it by anybody and if you hear anything, let me know. I'm going to be working on this this weekend, and I'll probably publish an op-ed about it next week. So just
Gotcha.
heads up.